The chamber of the Galactic Assembly was built to make smaller beings feel insignificant, and it succeeded admirably. Columns of black stone twisted upward into a vaulted ceiling of shimmering plasma glass that showed a rotating starfield above. Beams of cold light cut across the expanse, illuminating the marble-like floor where the delegations stood like insects before gods. In the highest seat, framed by banners of conquest woven from captured metals, the Vrylock general leaned back in his throne, his scaled jaw flexing as he let silence weigh down the air. "Humans," he declared, his voice carrying like the scrape of iron on stone. "You are summoned not as equals, but as subjects. Your world has been catalogued, your species measured, and the tribute you owe to the Empire calculated. Payment will be in or energy and servitude. Refusal is death." The words hung there. Across the chamber, other species shifted uneasily. Some smirked, delighted to see another primitive forced under the lash. Others watched more carefully, as though uncertain what the newest players in the galactic game might bring. The human envoy, a woman wrapped in a charcoal-gray diplomatic coat, stood alone on the polished floor. She looked small, unarmed, and entirely unremarkable. Her face bore lines of age, hair streaked with gray at the temples, but her eyes were alive, bright as embers that refused to cool. She bowed with practiced grace and let a faint smile play on her lips. "On behalf of Earth," she said gently, "I thank you for your hospitality. It is rare for us to be invited into such a magnificent hall. Quite a view you have there. Stars like scattered diamonds. Though I suppose for you, General, they're more like trophies." A ripple of laughter passed through the merchant caste in the upper tiers. The General's nostrils flared. He waved one clawed hand as if brushing aside dust. "You may keep your quaint metaphors," he rumbled. "You will obey or perish." The woman clasped her hands at her waist, posture impeccable, voice steady as calm waters. "I see. Tribute, then. Payment to preserve our survival. An old idea, one we are not unfamiliar with." Her smile deepened, but her tone did not sharpen. It remained pleasant, almost grandmotherly. "We've had our share of bandits demanding coin for protection. We even had whole empires of our own that taxed the weak. And you know what always happened to such systems, General?" The General narrowed his eyes. "Do not waste our patience." "They collapsed," she said sweetly, as if telling a bedtime story. "Overextended, greedy, blind to the ones they tried to dominate. The bandits grew too bold, and one day they demanded the wrong thing from the wrong village. Some aliens chuckled at her audacity. Others grew still, listening to the softness of her tone, and wondering why their skin crawled." The General leaned forward. His armored tail struck the stone dais with a dull boom. "You dare compare your dirtball world to this assembly?" "Not at all," she said brightly. "Your halls are much prettier." She tilted her head as though admiring the black columns again. "But the pattern remains. History does rhyme, General. You may not like the tune." One of the merchant lords barked with laughter. "Earthling, if your intent is to amuse, you succeed. Shall we tax them in jokes instead of, or?" Her eyes flicked toward him, warm as candlelight. "We are generous with those, certainly. But no, I think the General is serious." She turned back to the throne. "How much do you require from us?" The General bared fangs in a grin that was anything but kind. "Half your industrial output, 1/10 of your population as indentured labor, and every military craft dismantled." The chamber buzzed with approval. To strip a new species so thoroughly was routine. Many nodded, satisfied. The humans would either comply or vanish. Simple. But the envoy did not flinch. She only sighed as though disappointed in a student. "That does seem ambitious." "Ambitious?" the General repeated, voice hardening. "Of course." She took a step closer to the throne, boots clicking gently against the marble. "Because you assume we can survive losing half our industry and 1/10 of our people. You assume we will accept such chains. Which means, General, that you assume we are reasonable." The words carried differently than before, still gentle, still polite, but now with an undercurrent like distant thunder. The smirkers stopped smirking. The curious leaned forward. The general snarled. You will accept it. You are fragile things. Your bodies break under gravity greater than your own. Your ships are toys. Your world barely defended. What threat could you possibly pose? Her gaze softened, almost pitying. Fragile? Yes. Toys? Perhaps. But you see, General, fragile things learn tricks to survive. A toy in the right hands can still kill. The merchant lord scoffed. You exaggerate. Your species has barely touched the stars. She looked at him again, expression patient, as if addressing a child. True. We are young. We are clumsy. We fight amongst ourselves, waste resources, make terrible television. And yet, here we stand, before you. Not extinct. Not conquered. Somehow, despite our mess, we always endure. Silence pressed into the chamber. She allowed it to linger, like a teacher letting the lesson sink in. You wish for tribute, she continued more softly. But tribute is only paid by those who can afford it. For us, it would mean extinction. And extinction, General, is something humanity does not do willingly. We bite, we claw, we burn everything around us before we go quietly. Her words landed heavier than her voice suggested. An insectal delegate clicked its mandibles nervously. A serpentine priest whispered to his neighbor. Only the general seemed unmoved, though his tail struck the stone again with a louder crack. You threaten the assembly? She raised her brows, feigning innocence. Threaten? Oh, no. I simply describe us. We are inconvenient to kill. Like weeds. You burn us down, we sprout up again. You poison us, we adapt. You step on us, we slip between the cracks and grow in your basements. Hardly glorious. Just stubborn. The general rose to his full height, shadow falling over her. You dare mock us? Not at all. Her smile widened just a fraction, though her eyes stayed steady, unblinking. I only offer truth. If you want tribute, you must know the cost of asking it. For in demanding submission, you may call forth something you do not expect. The merchant caste began murmuring, some amused, others unsettled. The priest caste hissed with unease. A single elder of the scribes, their long tendrils twitching, spoke into the silence. General, perhaps we should measure twice before cutting once. This envoy speaks calmly, but— Silence, the general thundered. He loomed closer, lowering his snout until hot breath rolled over her like furnace air. You will obey, or you will die screaming. Those are the only paths. The envoy looked up at him, unblinking. The chamber seemed to lean in, as if the stars themselves held their breath. Perhaps, she murmured. But the trouble with threatening humans, General, is that it rarely works the way you intend. You may kill us. You may break us. But what happens after? That is a story you would not like its ending. The general growled low, but for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his eyes. She let the silence stretch once more, then bowed her head politely, as though this were nothing more than afternoon tea. Before we agree to any tribute, she said at last, her tone suddenly bright again, perhaps you should first understand what exactly you're demanding of humanity. And with that she smiled, a small, soft smile that somehow carried more weight than the general's roar. The chamber stirred, uneasy, as if the floor itself had shifted beneath them, and every species present felt the first hint of something they could not yet name, but instinctively feared. The silence that followed her smile lingered longer than any speech. It pressed down on the gathered delegations like an invisible weight, as though the chamber itself understood something they did not yet grasp. The general shifted his stance, talons clicking against stone, and barked a laugh to mask the unease creeping into his posture. You tell stories as if they matter, he said. This is not a fireside where children huddle from predators. This is the assembly. Your myths mean nothing here. The envoy tilted her head, her expression gracious, almost grandmotherly. Myths, yes, and yet they shape us. I wonder, General, did your people ever sit around fires? Did you pass down tales of hunters, of prey, of how you learned to endure? His scales rippled, a show of irritation. We needed no fires. We conquered light itself. Ah, she said with soft admiration. And yet you still need tribute. Curious. Ripples of nervous laughter scattered through the tears. The merchant caste found it entertaining, while the priests hissed, disturbed. The scribes leaned in, their tendrils twitching, as though recording more than words. The envoy clasped her hands loosely, voice dropping into a gentler cadence, the rhythm of a storyteller. Our history is long, general, and messy. We are a fractious species. We argue endlessly, bicker over land, squabble over resources. We fight each other almost compulsively. But the strange thing is, when threatened from outside, we stop. The chamber stilled, alien faces reflecting light from the ceiling stars. Once, there were tribes scattered across a continent, she continued. They fought endlessly, each claiming supremacy. Then strangers arrived with ships, steel, and fire. Those tribes united, briefly, imperfectly, but enough to make conquest costly. The invaders believed them simple. Many died learning otherwise. One of the merchant lords sneered. Old wars of a primitive world. Do not bore us with nostalgia. Her gaze found him, eyes calm, unblinking. Primitive, yes, but revealing. We do not unite easily, sir. Which means when we do, it is because survival demands it. And when survival demands, we are relentless. Her words slid like silk, yet carried the sharpness of hidden blades. Aliens murmured. Some still dismissed her as dramatic. Others found their stomachs turning with unease. You claim resilience, the general growled. But resilience is not power. She nodded graciously. True. Power is another thing entirely. Yet resilience breeds it. You see, fragile creatures learn to cheat. We had predators on our world, lions, sharks, tigers. Magnificent things, perfect hunters. And we admired them. But we feared them, too. And so, we learned to hunt them back. A serpentine priest hissed in disbelief. You hunted your own predators? She smiled faintly. What else could we do? We could not outrun them. We could not outfight them with tooth or claw. So we made tools, traps, weapons. We studied their habits until they could not surprise us. We learned patience from the leopard, persistence from the wolf, and cruelty from the serpent. We borrowed pieces from everything that tried to kill us, and we built ourselves out of that collage. The general scoffed, though the sound lacked conviction. Animals. That is all you are. Her voice did not waver. Oh, but animals who remember. Animals who build stories. And animals who learned, in time, to turn those lessons upon ourselves. We call it war. The chamber vibrated faintly with whispers. Some of the merchant caste shook their heads in amusement, certain this was posturing. Yet the priests coiled tighter, sensing the sacred dread of something not quite natural. The envoy's tone shifted again, conversational, almost playful. We even invented ways to kill ourselves by the millions. Splendid inventions, really. We built fire, so hot it could erase a city in the blink of an eye. And then we placed that fire everywhere. Do you know what is fascinating, General? His eyes narrowed. We didn't use it. Not fully. For decades we lived with death hanging over us, always within reach, always ready. And somehow we didn't press the final button. We lived beside annihilation like a neighbor with a loud dog. Do you know how exhausting that is? To wake every day knowing your world could end, and to sip your coffee anyway. Several aliens glanced at one another, their bioluminescent markings flickering in confusion. The mention of coffee meant nothing to them, but the casualness of her tone chilled them more than thunder. You boast of restraint, the general said. Yet restraint only proves fear. Her smile softened, amused. Does it? Or does it prove calculation? We are very good at waiting, General. Good at letting others underestimate us. We even tell jokes while waiting. Would you like to hear one? Murmurs rose. Some aliens leaned forward, expecting a jest. The general snarled, but she continued, voice light as silk. A farmer once had a problem with wolves eating his sheep. So he set traps. But the wolves learned, grew cautious. Then one night he scattered poison meat. The wolves avoided it, clever creatures that they were. And so the farmer waited. Weeks. Months. until the wolves grew hungry enough to take the bait. He found their bones in the morning. Her gaze lingered on the general. We admire wolves, General, but we know how to be the farmer. The chamber fell silent again, the humor drained, leaving only a tension like drawn wire. The merchant lord broke it with a bark of laughter. You are bluffing. Your species is too young, too weak. Empty words in a grand hall. The envoy's expression did not change. She studied him as though considering whether to correct a child's arithmetic. Words can be empty, yes, but sometimes they are warnings. Do you not wonder why I stand here so calmly? Why I came alone, without escort, without weapon? Do you think that is recklessness? Or confidence born from certainty? The general snarled and struck the dais with his tail again, cracks spidering across the stone. Enough riddles. You will pay what is owed. She let the silence after his command stretch thin, then spoke in a near whisper that still carried through the chamber. Perhaps. But you should ask yourself what we have already paid. Because while you prepared your demands, while you sharpened your claws and polished your throne, we were watching, listening. We learned your signals, your codes, your weaknesses. Do you truly believe we walked into your hall blind? The scribes stirred violently, tendrils twitching as they accessed records. Already, faint reports were filtering through. Disturbances in power grids, missing data fragments, anomalies in fleet telemetry. Whispers spread. Could it be true? The envoy folded her hands again, the picture of serenity. I tell you stories, General, not because they amuse me, but because they are what humans do before they kill. We talk. We smile. We give you every chance to walk away. It is our little kindness before the storm. The priest cast his prayers. The merchants shifted uncomfortably. Even the general's shadow seemed less certain as it fell across her. Fragile, she said softly. Yes, breakable. But have you never heard what happens when glass shatters? The shards cut deepest. The general bristled, voice cracking with fury. You lie. You are nothing but insects before the empire. Her eyes met his, unwavering, kind yet merciless. Then crush us. But know this, every time you strike us, you only teach us how to strike back harder. Every wound becomes a lesson. Every death a debt. And humanity, she leaned closer, voice dropping to a silken whisper, always collects its debts. The chamber pulsed with silence. Even the banners seemed to hang heavier. For the first time, some of the gathered began to imagine not fragile humans, but something else. Something patient, smiling, and deadly beneath its politeness. The general's chest heaved, rage warring with unease. He barked orders to his aides. Troops were summoned. Power systems flickered as commands rippled out to the fleet. Yet through it all, the envoy stood calmly, adjusting the cuff of her coat as though bored. When she finally spoke again, her tone was light, almost cheerful. So tell me again, General, how much tribute do you think you're owed? The general's bellow shook the vaulted chamber, a primal sound meant to scatter courage like dry leaves before storm. Guards, seize this insolent creature. Strip her of titles, strip her flesh, and display what becomes of those who mock the empire. Armored troops surged from alcoves along the chamber walls, their exosuits bristling with spikes and glowing weapon ports. The floor trembled beneath their synchronized steps, each movement like a drumbeat promising annihilation. The envoy did not move. She adjusted the cuff of her coat, smoothed a wrinkle at her sleeve, and exhaled as though impatient with the dust in the air. Her calm seemed so profoundly at odds with the soldiers bearing down that even the merchant caste fell silent, waiting for panic that never came. You ought to reconsider, she said softly. The general snarled, spittle flecking his jagged teeth. Your words are air. Obedience or death, there is nothing else. At that moment, the chamber lights dimmed. Not fully, just a flicker, the faintest stutter of power. The scribes' tendrils lashed wildly as reports flared across their neural nets. Something was wrong. Energy conduits, comms relays, even the encrypted fleet channels. Something invisible gnawed at them. The envoy glanced upward, as though admiring the flickering starlight through the glass ceiling. Curious thing about your networks, she mused. So many doors left unlocked. Did you think no one would ever knock? The general's eyes widened. What? The chamber darkened again, this time more sharply. Alien delegates hissed in panic as the plasma glass ceiling flickered into static, the constellations above replaced by blank, gray interference. Troops faltered mid-step, their exosuits spasming as invisible hands yanked at their control systems. One by one, their glowing visors died, leaving armored bodies stiff as statues. A single clatter echoed as a soldier collapsed, armor inert, weapon slipping free. Another followed, then another, until the chamber was littered with immobilized war machines, warriors trapped in shells that no longer obeyed them. The envoy raised her chin. You really should update your firmware. The merchants shouted. The priests hissed frantic prayers. The scribes convulsed in data overload, their tendrils twitching with incomprehensible streams. The general roared, voice cracking with disbelief. Impossible. No outsider has ever pierced our security. Her smile was faint, but her words carried sharp as glass. Humans are persistent tinkerers, General. We once broke codes considered unbreakable, intercepted transmissions meant to be divine. Do you think your encryption, recycled from 100 conquered worlds, would fare better? The general slammed his tail against the dais, cracks spidering deeper. Bluff. This is illusion. She tilted her head, as though considering. Then she snapped her fingers. The sound echoed sharp as a gunshot in the hushed chamber. Instantly, every alien communicator sparked. Holoscreens flared to life, unbidden, displaying footage, grainy, yet unmistakable. Alien fleets. Dozens of warships drifting in formation outside the station. Each one suddenly blinked with red markers, systems offline, reactors choked into silence. Some ships even rotated helplessly, like toys nudged by invisible hands. The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Priests screamed. Merchants shouted accusations. The scribes writhed, bombarded with error reports from every vessel. The envoy lowered her hand. Illusion, you said? Tell me, General, do your ships usually power down at once? Or is this a special occasion? The general staggered back a step, his massive chest heaving. His command staff flailed at consoles, their claws scraping stone as they tried desperately to override dead channels. Nothing answered. You, his voice cracked, thick with disbelief. You disabled a fleet? Alone. Her laugh was gentle, almost tender. Alone? Oh no, General. I am but a grandmother with good manners. But humanity is never truly alone. We have children everywhere. The chamber doors groaned, then hissed open. From the shadows slipped figures clad in chameleon suits, outlines blurred like heat haze. Their visors glimmered faint blue, rifles tucked casually at their sides. They moved with the unhurried precision of predators entering a den. Not dozens, not hundreds, just 10. 10 humans against the Empire's might, and yet the air seemed to tilt around them, as if gravity bent to their favor. One knelt beside a paralyzed alien trooper and tapped the suit's armor. The exoshell groaned, splitting open like fruit. The human plucked the weapon free, examined it with clinical detachment, then set it down. Not a word spoken, not a movement wasted. The envoy's smile never faltered. You summoned tribute collectors, General. But we came with auditors, and we found your empire unworthy of investment. The merchants wailed in outrage. This is piracy, one shrieked, mandibles clacking. A trick. A trick, yes, she said kindly. But one learned from you. We watched your games of power, your false treaties, your extortion. We saw the pattern. And humans, well, we are very good at copying. Only difference is we improve what we copy. The general staggered down from his throne, scales quivering with rage. His claws scraped stone as he advanced. You dare. One of the chameleon-suited humans raised a finger to his lips, a silent shushing gesture. The general froze, stunned at the audacity. That tiny, universal sign carried more weight than the thunder of cannons. The envoy's voice dropped, calm and low. We are polite, General. We smile, we bow, we tell stories. But that is only the mask. The truth is this: every kindness from a human carries a hidden knife. Every smile hides teeth. The general lashed his tail, shattering a column. You threaten the assembly itself. She shook her head. No, General. I warn it. The tribute you demand is not ore or labor or craft. The true tribute is blood, and humanity always collects it with interest. The chamber pulsed with silence, broken only by the distant hum of systems straining under sabotage. Delegates shifted, eyes darting toward exits that suddenly seemed too narrow, too far. The general drew himself tall again, voice raw with desperation. Even if you struck this fleet, you cannot strike them all. The empire is vast. You will drown in our numbers. Her gaze softened, almost pitying. Numbers do not frighten us. Do you know why? Because for us, death has always been cheap. We do not fear drowning, General. We learned to breathe underwater. The words landed like hammer blows. Aliens who had mocked now shivered. Priests hissed prayers of warding. Even the merchants, calculating endlessly, began to whisper that perhaps humanity's extinction cost too much. The envoy stepped closer, her boots clicking in calm rhythm. You look at us and see weakness. But weakness is camouflage. You see fragility and mistake it for vulnerability. You never stop to ask why we survived long enough to meet you. The general bared his fangs, but his eyes flickered, hunted now. Her smile was kind, merciless. Because, General, we are the trap. We always were. And now you've stepped in. She raised her hand again. The humans in chameleon suits moved as one, rifles lifting with mechanical grace. The chamber gasped. Not a shot fired. Only the implication, the promise of what could happen if her fingers curled. The envoy let her hand fall gently. Not today, she murmured. We are civilized. We give choices. But know this, your empire is no longer the hunter. From this moment on, it is the prey. The general staggered, chest heaving, but pride still flaring. You will not win. You cannot hold what you take. The galaxy will unite against you. She smiled, as if hearing an old joke retold. Ah, General, that is the part we rely on most. The chamber froze. The words dangled there, too heavy, too dangerous. For the first time, the alien delegates wondered if all this, the envoy, the sabotage, the spectacle, was not defense, but invitation. A lure. The envoy folded her hands once more, eyes alight like embers beneath ash. You think we fear your unity. But history, General, has already shown. Nothing terrifies humanity more than each other. And nothing unites us faster than an enemy that believes it can collect tribute from our children. The general's breath rasped, fury collapsing into something colder. He sensed it now, the outline of the net around him, the edges of a story bigger than this all. The envoy turned, her coat whispering as she faced the assembled species. You will tell your worlds what you saw today. You will tell them humanity came politely, smiled sweetly, and revealed only a fraction of its teeth. And when you do, you will tell them this: the storm has not yet begun. She bowed, as if the meeting were concluded, as if nothing unusual had transpired in a chamber littered with paralyzed troops and silenced fleets. And then, almost as an afterthought, her eyes flicked back to the general. Oh, one more thing. Her smile widened, warm as a hearth fire, sharp as a knife's edge. This entire conversation, every word, every threat, every sneer, is being broadcast live across your empire. The chamber collapsed into chaos. The chamber dissolved into pandemonium. Delegates scrambled for exits, their robes and armor tangling in the chaos, their voices rising in shrieks, prayers, and curses. Some clawed at each other to reach safety. Others simply froze, transfixed by the terror that spread faster than flame through dry grass. The general stood at the center of it all, chest heaving, his tail slamming the ground like a war drum, but the authority in his roar was gone. The envoy did not move. She waited, composed, as though she had seen this scene 1,000 times before in 1,000 different guises. Her hands folded neatly before her gaze resting on the general, with something almost maternal in its patience. Around her, the human operatives melted further into shadow, visible only as glimmers of movement, like predators circling in tall grass. "Order," the general roared, spittle flecking his scaled chin. "You will not panic. Sit down, all of you." But the words were thin, stripped of their weight. No one listened. The assembly that had once knelt to him now scattered, like vermin before a torch. The envoy lifted her chin, her voice soft but cutting through the uproar like a blade through silk. "Listen closely, all of you. What you are witnessing is not the end of your empire. Not yet. This is only its first wound. And you should know, humanity has learned to bleed our enemies slowly." The words caught the chamber, drew the chaos into a trembling stillness. Every alien eye swung toward her, as though some primal instinct demanded obedience to the calm voice that rose in the storm. She turned her gaze back to the general, her expression never unkind, though her words grew colder. "You thought tribute would buy safety. But safety is not for sale, General. Not from us. We never traded in safety. We traded in survival." The general staggered closer, his claws gouging furrows in the stone floor. His voice cracked with desperation. "You cannot fight us all. Even if you cripple one fleet, 100 more stand ready. We will burn your worlds until nothing remains but ash." Her smile was faint, her eyes steady. "Perhaps. But you misunderstand what frightens humanity. We are not afraid of ash. We came from ash. We have already burned ourselves 1,000 times over, and still we rise. Do you think another fire will end us? It will only remind us who we are." The scribes writhed, tendrils lashing as new reports surged through their neural streams. Entire sectors blinking dark, trade routes severed, refineries going silent. Whispers swept the chamber, sabotage blooming across the empire like a plague. The envoy allowed the murmurs to build before speaking again, her tone almost wistful. "You wanted tribute. Very well. Consider this our gift, the story of what happens when you demand blood from humanity." She took a step forward, her boots striking softly against marble. "We smile first. Always. We give warnings, second chances, little kindnesses. But when you ignore them, when you raise your hand against us, you discover the truth." The general trembled, rage and disbelief battling across his scaled face. "What truth?" "That we are not prey," she whispered. For a heartbeat, the chamber was silent, as if the universe itself inhaled. And then the walls shook. A sound rolled through the structure, not thunder, not cannon fire, but something heavier, older, like tectonic plates grinding against each other. The plasma glass above flickered once more, and this time the static dissolved to show what hung beyond. Ships, not the elegant, ornate constructs of the Empire, but sharp-edged silhouettes, dark as midnight, bristling with strange angles and weapons whose design the aliens could not comprehend. Human warships, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They stretched across the starfield like a second constellation, blotting out the light with their sheer number. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some collapsed where they stood. Others whispered curses or prayers, though none knew which gods might listen now. The general's legs buckled. He staggered back, clutching at his throne for support. "No, impossible. Your species is primitive. You do not have this power." The envoy's smile never wavered. "You assumed our first ships were our only ships. That what you saw was all we possessed. But humans learned long ago that survival favors those who hide their teeth until it is too late." The general's claws scraped the throne. "You lied. You lured us." She inclined her head. "Of course. Did you think a species that survived its own endless wars would ever walk into an empire's hall unprepared? This was never negotiation, General. It was reckoning." A roar of terror rose from the chamber as more holofeeds flared to life, showing sector after sector falling into shadow. Empires built over centuries, reduced to silence in a single coordinated heartbeat. The general collapsed to his knees, his massive shoulders shuddering. His voice broke into something almost like pleading. "If you do this, the galaxy will unite against you." She stepped closer, her voice so soft it forced the silence to deepen. "Yes, And that is the point. Confusion rippled across alien faces. Her eyes gleamed ember bright. Humanity thrives when cornered. We grow dangerous when threatened. But when the galaxy unites against us, then, General, we finally become ourselves. You call us fragile. But what is fragility if not the sharpest camouflage? What is weakness if not the perfect snare? You gave us unity today, and that, I'm afraid, is the last gift your empire will ever give. The general's breath rasped, his chest heaving, his pride dissolving into dread. He tried to rise, but his legs refused him. He stared up at her, his eyes wide and wet. What are you? Her smile was warm, merciless. We are polite monsters, General, and we never pay tribute. We collect debts. The words struck harder than any cannon blast. Delegates shrank from her, whispering frantically, trying to reconcile the grandmotherly figure before them with the abyss her words revealed. And then, outside, the first human salvo struck. Not bright, not flamboyant. No fireworks. Just silence. Alien fleets winked out one by one, their reactors gutted by invisible precision, their weapons gone dark, their crews left stranded in drifting tombs. A clean kill. Efficient. Without joy, without gloating, simply done. The chamber shook again, a tremor rippling through the stone. Dust fell from the ceiling. Priests wailed. Merchants sobbed. Even the scribes, overwhelmed, fell into seizures, their tendrils twitching helplessly. The envoy closed her eyes for a moment, as though listening to some distant, familiar song. When she opened them, they glistened with something that was not quite sorrow, not quite satisfaction. This is the cost of your tribute, she said softly. And still, it is only the beginning. The general raised his head one last time, eyes blazing with futile defiance. You cannot hold the galaxy. It will consume you. She crouched beside him, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Perhaps. But tell me, General, do you know what happens when something tries to consume poison? His jaw trembled, but no words came. She rose, turning back to the chamber, her voice carrying with terrifying clarity. Let all who hear this broadcast remember, humanity is not the beggar you expected, nor the tribute payer you demanded. We are the storm that answers arrogance. We are the debt collectors of history. And when we smile, it is only because we already set the trap. The chamber erupted once more into chaos, but it no longer mattered. The message had gone out. Across the stars, empires watched in horror as their fleets dimmed, their strongholds faltered. And the humans, those fragile, breakable, smiling apes, stood revealed not as prey, but as predators who wore masks of courtesy until the moment came to strike. The envoy turned, coat whispering around her legs, and walked toward the exit as though concluding a pleasant visit. The human operatives followed, silent shadows slipping after her. She paused only once, glancing back at the shattered assembly, at the general kneeling amidst the wreckage of his throne. Her smile was soft, almost tender. The storm has begun. And with that, she left the hall, the echoes of her words trailing behind her like the tolling of a funeral bell for an empire that had not yet realized it was already dead.